My name is Arthur Hale, and the night my own daughter called me a beggar was the night everything changed. It happened at a family dinner meant to celebrate success, their success. A polished restaurant downtown, white tablecloths, soft lighting, the kind of place where menus don't list prices because they assume you don't need to ask. I sat quietly at the end of the table, my hands folded, my coat still on because I hadn't wanted to impose by ordering another drink. Across from me sat my daughter Vanessa, flawless in a designer dress, her wedding ring flashing every time she lifted her glass. Beside her lounged her husband Caleb, relaxed, smug, perfectly comfortable in a world I had paid to build. Conversation drifted around me until Vanessa noticed my untouched plate. "You're not eating, Dad," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Is something wrong? Or is this place a little out of your budget?" A few people laughed, not kindly. Caleb didn't even look at me. He just smirked and poured himself more wine. "We probably should have picked somewhere cheaper," he added, "for Arthur's sake." The word landed like a slap. Someone cleared their throat. An aunt stared down at her napkin. No one defended me. Vanessa leaned closer, her voice sharp and precise. "Honestly, Dad, what kind of father can't even afford a house? All these years and you're still scraping by. It's embarrassing." Then she said it. "You're basically a beggar." The table went silent. I felt every sacrifice I'd ever made press against my chest at once. The years of overtime, the dreams I buried, the money I handed over without contracts or gratitude, college tuition, wedding costs, business loans, rent deposits, all of it, erased in a single sentence. I could have shouted. I could have reminded them who paid for Vanessa's education, who emptied his savings for her wedding, who handed Caleb the startup money that built his cafes. But I didn't. I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, but because something inside me hardened into clarity. "You done?" I asked quietly. Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Don't make a scene." Caleb raised his glass. "To Arthur," he said mockingly, "king of nothing." That was enough. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor, and picked up my jacket. "Enjoy your dinner," I said calmly. "Truly." Vanessa didn't look at me. Caleb was already laughing again. I walked out into the cold night, the restaurant door closing behind me, sealing off the sound of their voices. My breath fogged in the air as I stood on the sidewalk, staring at my reflection in a darkened window. They thought I was finished. They were wrong. At home, the silence was heavier than the insults. My house was small, modest, worn by time and use. I sat on the couch and stared at an old photograph on the shelf. Vanessa, at 6 years old, missing a tooth, holding a flower she'd picked for me. I remembered signing the loan for her college, my hands aching from double shifts. I remembered paying for her wedding while quietly letting go of my own plans to travel, to rest, to live. I remembered Caleb shaking my hand years earlier, promising his cafe would change everything, promising I'd be paid back. I was never paid back. The clock ticked loudly in the kitchen. That night, I didn't sleep. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't broke. I had lived simply, quietly, carefully. I still had savings. I still had contacts. And I still had something they underestimated completely. Patience. I opened a notebook and wrote 2 names, Vanessa Hale, Caleb Morris. Then I made my first call. A former colleague, Martin Crow, answered with a tired laugh. "Arthur, this early? Everything all right?" "I need information," I said, "about Caleb's businesses." There was a pause. "That's complicated. You sure you want to know?" "Yes." Martin sighed. "He's over-leveraged, loans stacked on loans, missed payments, one wrong move and the whole thing collapses." I closed my eyes. "Who holds the debt?" I asked. "Midland Financial," Martin said, "and a few private investors. Why?" "Thank you," I said and hung up. The plan wasn't revenge fueled by rage. It was something colder, cleaner. I spent the day researching quietly, public filings, property records, business registrations. Vanessa's online boutique was bleeding money. Customer complaints piled up. Refund demands ignored. Image over substance. By evening, I knew exactly where to apply pressure. Within a week, through a holding company that didn't carry my name, I bought a significant portion of Caleb's outstanding debt. He didn't know. Not yet. The letter went out the next morning. Payment due 30 days. By noon, one of his cafes was closed for renovations. By evening, suppliers were walking out. My phone rang. I let it ring. When I finally answered, Caleb's voice cracked through the line. "Arthur, this creditor situation, you wouldn't know anything about it, would you?" I leaned against the counter, calm. "Sounds serious," I said. "Maybe you should have planned better." Silence. I hung up. That was only the beginning. Caleb's confidence didn't collapse all at once. It fractured slowly, the way glass does when the pressure builds from the inside. Within days of the payment notice, calls started coming in. Suppliers wanted guarantees. Lenders wanted meetings. Employees wanted answers Caleb didn't have. His cafes, once buzzing with noise and ego, turned quiet and hollow. Chairs stacked early. Lights shut off before sunset. Vanessa noticed too, though she pretended not to. Her boutique was unraveling online. Customers complained publicly. Orders were delayed. Refunds never came. She doubled down on appearances, posting photos of silk dresses and champagne glasses, captions about living boldly and trusting the process. But the comments told the truth she refused to face. "Where's my order?" "Scammer." No response for weeks. I watched it all from a distance. I didn't gloat. I observed. One evening, there was a knock at my door. Sharp, urgent. I already knew who it was. Vanessa stormed in first, her composure cracked, her makeup rushed, her heels clicking hard against the floor. Caleb followed, his blazer wrinkled, his confidence leaking out of him like air from a punctured tire. "This is because of you," Vanessa snapped. "You're jealous. That's what this is." I didn't move from where I stood by the kitchen table. "Jealous of what?" I asked calmly. Caleb paced, running his hands through his hair. "Banks don't just do this. Someone's pulling strings. And you've been asking questions." I shrugged. "Sounds like business." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "You live in this tiny house and suddenly you think you're smarter than us. You've always hated that we made it without you." That was the lie she needed to believe. "You made it because of me," I said quietly. "Every step." Caleb slammed his hand against the wall. "You owe us, old man. Family helps family. I stepped closer, close enough for them to hear the steadiness in my voice. I helped, I said. You took. There's a difference. Vanessa's voice wavered. You're trying to ruin us. No, I said. I'm letting consequences catch up. They left furious, convinced I was bluffing. I wasn't. That same week, I made my second move. I called Ronald Pierce, a real estate broker I'd worked with years ago, someone who knew how to move quietly. I want a building, I said, downtown, corner of 14th and High. There was a pause. That's expensive and fast. I know, I said. Do it through a shell company. Another pause. Arthur, you sure about this? Yes. The paperwork moved faster than they expected. Money talks when it's prepared. Lawyers didn't ask questions they didn't need answers to. Contracts were signed under fluorescent lights and polite smiles. By the time Vanessa opened her mail and saw the notice, it was already done. Rent adjustment. Effective immediately. Increase 300%. She called me screaming. This is harassment, she said. We'll sue. Read the fine print, I replied. You're month to month. Caleb stopped calling after that. I saw them through the window one night as I walked past their building. Vanessa pacing. Caleb slumped on the couch, papers everywhere, the illusion of control gone. A week later, Caleb's last cafe closed. I found him days after that in a bar near the freeway, hunched over a glass, blaming everyone but himself. He didn't see me sitting quietly in the corner. They're out to get me, he slurred. The system's rigged. I finished my coffee and left. The final documents arrived on a stormy evening. Property transfer complete. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my coat pocket. The next day, I rode the elevator up to their floor. Their door was already open, boxes lined the walls. The air smelled of stress and stale wine. Vanessa looked up first. Dad, she whispered. I laid the documents on the table. Caleb read them twice before his hand started shaking. You own the building, Vanessa said. That's not possible. It is, I said, and your rent is overdue. Caleb lost it then. Threats, promises, bargains, none of it mattered. Vanessa cried. I didn't mean it, she said. What I said at the restaurant, I was angry. You were honest, I replied, and honesty has weight. I walked out while they were still begging. In the elevator, doubt flickered for half a second. Then I remembered the laughter, the word, beggar. The doors opened. Outside, the rain had stopped. I pulled out my phone and wrote a note. For the forgotten. For those who gave everything and were left with nothing. The idea had been forming for a while. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about purpose. After I walked out of their apartment, I didn't feel victory. I felt quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when something heavy finally stops pressing on your chest. For days, I stayed home, drinking coffee by the window, watching the city move without me. The storm I'd started had passed, leaving wreckage behind, but also clarity. I had taken back control of my life, but control alone isn't purpose. I needed something more than justice. That's when the idea I'd written in my notebook began to take shape. A fund, not for revenge, for people like me, parents who gave everything, workers who sacrificed years, people who were used, dismissed, laughed at. then discarded once they were no longer convenient. I made calls, lawyers, accountants, advisors. Nobody questioned my resolve. Within weeks, the foundation was real. Small at first, but solid. A place where overlooked people could find support, grants, and dignity. Again. That same week, I received a letter. Vanessa's handwriting. I didn't open it right away. The envelope sat on my table for 2 days before I finally unfolded it. She wrote about memories, about how I used to hold the bike seat while she learned to ride, about how safe she used to feel when I walked into a room. She apologized. She said she hadn't seen me. She asked for forgiveness. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. Some wounds heal, others teach. I didn't hate her, but I didn't rush back either. A month later, I stood in a small community center, facing a room full of strangers, men and women with tired eyes and straight backs, people who had given their best years to others and been forgotten. I stepped to the podium. "This fund exists," I said, "because too many people are told their worth ends when their usefulness does. That's a lie. If you've sacrificed, if you've been overlooked, this is for you." The applause wasn't loud at first, then it grew. After the meeting, I walked home under street lights that hummed softly in the evening air. For the first time in years, my steps felt light. A neighbor stopped me. "Saw your daughter," he said carefully. "She and her husband moved across town. Small place, no luxury." I nodded. That chapter was no longer mine to manage. That night, I stood in my kitchen, holding Vanessa's letter again. I reread it slowly, then placed it back in the drawer beside old checks and faded photographs. Some doors don't close with anger. They close with acceptance. I looked around my modest home, the same one they once mocked, and smiled. It had sheltered my values, my patience, my resolve. It had held me together when others tried to tear me down. They called me a beggar. But beggars don't build futures. They don't create legacies. They don't turn humiliation into purpose. I did. And if you're listening to this and you've ever been mocked for being patient, for being kind, for giving more than you received, remember this. Quiet strength is still strength. And sometimes the people who look down on you are standing on the very foundation you built. If this story moved you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let others know where you're listening from, and remember, your value is not decided by those who failed to see it. Thank you for listening.